agenda. We will see what is an SRM. I will just have a brief of it. Then we will see the architecture of a service catalog, how a service catalog is built, what are the different components of a service catalog and how they are interrelated. Then we will see building of AOT, PDT and SRD, what is the dependency between them, how they are interrelated. Then we will move on to verify the deployed SRD. In here we will see how we'll make sure that the SRD which is deployed in the production is according to the requirement or is perfect for the customer. Then we will move on to the debugging the SRD, so which means that somehow the SRDs which we have deployed in production are not working. So we will see how we can debug that SRD, what are the different ways of debugging, we'll also have a look at. Then we will finally see how we can disable a deployed SRD. We will see that the SRDs which are there in production system, if we want to disable those SRD, how we can do it. So what exactly is SRM? So it is basically a service portal which is published to the end customers, and it is built out of the services from an organization. We know that as part of an organization we have different services given to the customers. So here in SRM what we do, we build catalogs out of those services, and these catalogs are then published to the end customers as a part of self-service module, where the customers can go raise, they can either raise a request or they can raise an issue for that service from the same module. So then once they raise it, they can also, there's a provision of monitoring that particular request or the issue which they have raised. So SRM gives us a single point of contact for customers and end users. So it gives us a single module where the customers can raise their issues and service requests, and then they can monitor them, and also they have to come into this particular module only. They do not have to go to different sections for different types of tickets. So everything comes under single umbrella. So with this SRM brings the transparency in an organization. So it helps us in getting the transparency for all the issues or requests which are raised in our organization. So people will come to know that where their issues are currently lying, or with which teams the service requests are currently lying. Then also we have approvals for requests that can be handled very smoothly in SRM. So SRM as part of a self-service model also integrates with approval engine, where if there are certain requests where we need the approvals, we can make use of the approval engine and can perform those approvals, and finally the request will be submitted. So it also becomes easier for the users to interact with internal system for addressing their requests. So this is very the use of SRM is very basic, and we have kept it for the end users only, so it is very easy to use for the end customers also. Now we will see the architecture of a service catalog. This is how a service catalog looks like. So a service catalog which is published to the end users, so internally it has three components. One is AOT, which is called application object template. So this is basically a template where we add all the fields as part of this template. Let's say for example we have a template for incident management, so we will add all the required fields from the incident management. Similarly for other modules if we are using them. So we build this AOT as a template in the system. Then based on this AOT we build the PDT, which is called process definition template. So once this process definition template is built, then we move on to building an SRD, which is called service request definition. So in service request definition we use this PDT, where we map the actual responses from the customer to the underlying variables from PDT, which are ultimately mapped to the fields from AOT in the underlying or fulfillment application. So we will see this all as part of this complete PPT. This was just a brief of all the three. So this is how the complete architecture of a service catalog looks like. So we'll move on to the next part. So we'll see like if you want to build an AOT in the Remedy system, so as an administrator you have to log in into the ITSM, go to the application administration console. So before going on building an AOT, you should have the required permissions. That means you should have service request management permissions. You can verify them from the permission console, that what permissions are required to give you access to create these AOT, PDT and SRDs. So we'll move on to here. So we will go on clicking the application administration console, then we will go to the custom foundation, as you can see in the screenshot, and then in the service request management part we will go to the define application object template. We will click on that, and then finally we can double click it, or we can click on the open button which is in the below section of this form. Then the form on the right hand side will open. So you can see in the form we have to provide the company name. So company name is the company to which this template will belong. Then we have to give the type of this template, whether it's a template or it's a non-template. This we have to define. Then we have to give the name. This we can give as part of our convenience, can give the name. We have to give the summary of this particular template, and then we have to also mention that with which application we'll be using this template. So here we have mentioned the incident management. So similarly we will have to set the status of this particular request. So currently it is being set to active. That means this is live and we can use this AOT. So we'll move on to the next slide. So now we have here AOT, which is, we will see now how we can add the target data in AOT. So the process of adding the target data is that you need to add the fields in this template. From the application perspective, what are the required fields? You need to add them into this AOT template, so that finally we can map them with variables from PDT and then to the responses from the customer in SRD. So you can see we have to click on target data, then select the fields to be used, provide default values. So if you want to provide any default values, which is an optional, you can either provide it or you can leave it as blank. Then select exposed. So if you want to expose this particular field to the end customers, you have to select it, either you can keep it as it is. Then click add button to the edit. Similarly we'll do the same for rest of the fields. So we have to analyze first that how many fields are mandatory for then particular application, then we have to add them, and then finally when the adding process is done, we will click on save AOT, and the save button you can see, which is at the bottom of the screenshot on the left hand side. We'll click it and the AOT will get saved in the system. Now as we have built the AOT, which is called application object template, now we will build a PDT using this AOT. So to build this PDT, we have to go to the we have to log into the system. We have to go to service request management, then to service catalog manager console, as you can see on the screen. So the moment you click on this, it will open up the form on the right hand side. On the right hand side of the form, you have to go to the console function, and there are two options, a request definition and process. So we have to click on the process. So we will click on that process. So the moment we click on the process, on the left hand side it will open up the console for that process. Then we have to click the create button at the, which you can see at the bottom of the screen. We have to click this create button to begin the process of creating an PDT. Now this is the form of a PDT which you will see when you will click on the create button. So you can see we have also provided these steps to configure the PDT. So here we have to basically configure three parts. One is mapping AOT with PDT, then we have to define variables for PDT and map those variables with data fields from the mapped AOT. So first we have to map AOT with this PDT. That is, we have to use a particular AOT with this PDT. So here in this example we will be using the AOT which we built in the previous slide, so we'll use that AOT. Then we have to define variables from the PDT, and then we have to map these variables with the data fields from the AOT. So mapping, first of all we'll see mapping AOT with PDT. So provide information like process name and company. Take your mouse cursor to AOT as shown in the figure. You can see if we have to add this AOT to this PDT, we have to first of all provide the name at the top of the form. You can see you have to provide the process name and then company. So once this is provided, then we have to take our mouse to the AOT section which is marked as red. Then we have to hold the left click of the mouse and drag this AOT to the center of the screen. You can see we have already dragged this to the center of the screen. So you can also read through the steps to understand it better. So once we drag it to the center of the screen, then we have to click on this icon. So the moment we click on this icon at the center, you will see on the right hand side you will see a process step properties section. So you have to go to the properties section. So here what we are doing is we are mapping the AOT with the PDT. So in the properties section, there you select the AOT created in the earlier section. As I said, that whatever AOT we created in the earlier section, we will select that AOT here. In the you will get this as a part of a drop down list. So you select it. As in our case, we have selected the one we created earlier. Now we have to click on apply. So the moment you click on apply, your AOT is related with your PDT. So we'll move on to the next screenshot. So now we will see defining variables as part of the building PDT process. So define variable section allows us to define variables which will ultimately be mapped to the fields defined in the AOT section. So this is what we explained earlier also. So here we have to define. So here while defining the variables for PDT, so we have to define as number of variables as we have the AOT fields. So there are other there are few other options as well, but as part of this to keep it much simpler, we will here be only explaining you the mapping of fields from variables from PDT to the AOT. So we will provide variable name, description, default value if any, then provide type. We have to provide the type of this variable. It can be either process input or process output. So here in our case it is a process input, so we will select the process input. Then we'll click to add this variable to the PDT. So similarly we will add all the other variables. So you can see those variables are visible in the table below. So the moment you add it, it gets added to the table. So we'll move on to the next section. So now here we will see how we can map these data fields with the variables or the variables which we created in the earlier section. So these are the steps which we have. So we have to select the data field in the table as shown in the figure. So you select any of the data field. Then from the input field, you can see there are two fields below. One is the input and another one is the output. So we will we'll click the menu in the input field and then select the variable to be mapped. So whatever fields we have at the top of the table, we have to map them with a particular variable. Then we have to click apply to do the mapping. So once we do the mapping, you will be able to see both of the fields in the above table. As you can see here in the above table, we have got detailed description and description mapped. So that is why they are visible in the above table. So now once we will do mapping for all the variables, so then finally we can save this PDT. Now this AOT is created. We have built PDT using that AOT, that is also saved in the system. Now we will see how we can build a service request definition as SRD. So this is how you will log into the system. You will go to the service request management, then go to service request designer, and then once you click on the service request designer, the form on your right hand side will open. So on this form you will see there's an option like, would you like to create a new service or modify an existing service? So here we are creating a new service, so we'll select the create. It's by default the create is selected, so we'll not do anything. We'll just click on the next button. So once we click on the next button, so we will go to the description section. Here you need to provide the company details, you need to provide the title, you need to provide the description of this particular SRD. Then you have to select the category. So if you know the category is available from the list, you can select it, but if you do not have the category and you want to create it, then we have an option here also, so which is manage categories. So to create it, we have to click on the manage categories. So once you click on the manage categories, you will move on to the pop-up form will open up, where we have to add this particular category, and these are the steps. So this is how we create the navigational category. So we have to click on the add button to add a new category. So the moment you click on the add button, you can see a new category is added to the already a list of categories. So in the right hand side, you have to provide the details of this category, like the name, description. So if you want image for this particular category, then also you can add it in the image section. Then we have to finally click on the apply button to save it. Now once we have added the category, we can close this particular console. So in the once we close it, we will again go to the designer console, and then we have to click on the next. So the moment you click next on the designer console, you will be able to see this search criteria for SRD, and then where you have to if there are any search criteria you want to provide for an SRD, you can provide them, and then we'll again click on the next. So once you click on the next, so here is an option, we'll move on to the fulfillment part, where you have to attach an PDT with the SRD. So here how you have to attach it, you can see there's a list down of PDTs in this SRD. So you have to select one of them, and then you have to click apply. So once you select it, click apply, it will be applied to this particular SRD. So as part of this particular SRD also we can create questions. So I'll explain you on questions, what exactly are questions. So questions are nothing, these are the inputs which we ask from the end users. So when this SRD will be published to the customers, so these questions will be prompted to the user, who will provide us the required answers from this question, and then we can map them with the underlining fields. So to add a question in the field, these are the steps. So we have to click add question to add a new question. Then we have to provide details of the question. So in the question, it can be either an simple text or it can be of a menu. So this you need to go through the documentation of SRM, where you will be able to understand it, different types of questions where you can add. It can either be an radio button, it can be a menu, or it can be a drop down, or any other thing, or a simple text in the question. Like it depends on what type of questions you want to ask to your end customers. So once the question is created, you can either select this is a mandatory question, so where user needs to provide the answer, without which he cannot submit the SRD, or you can keep it as an optional. You can also provide a default value for this particular question. So once you are through to the question building process, you have to click on the next. So once you click on the next, you will go on to the action section. So this is quite a little bit advanced part of this questions. I will just brief you on it. If you want to use it, you can use it with further reading, or you can just leave it as it is. So questions are basically some actions you want to the actions are basically some actions you want to perform from the questions. So you can use those actions from the on the SRD itself. If you want certain actions to be performed for certain question answers which the end user gives you, so you can configure it here, but we will not go deep on this because this is one of the advanced features from the service request management. So we'll click on the next. So here we will move on to the section where we have to map the PDT variables with the questions. So you can see we have created questionnaire as part of the last section. So here we will see how we can map those questions with the variables from the PDT. So we have to click on the variables in the left hand side. So you can see we have the variables from the left hand side. So then we have to either we can map this particular variable with a question, or we can map it with a text value, or we can select any of the SRD field and this question will be mapped with that field. So that means when this service request will be submitted, the whatever is there in that field, it will get mapped to this particular variable, or whatever there is in this variable, it will be pushed to that particular field. So we'll click on the next button. So this is quite interesting here, this section where you have an option of either putting your response, either getting the variable mapped with the question or with a text field or with a service request management field. So these are quite advanced features. By default we can use a question where we can map our field. So whatever answer user gives, it will get mapped to that particular variable in the PDT, and finally that variable value will be get mapped with the field in the AOT which we have built in the earlier processes. So now finally when you go on adding the mapping the variables with the questionnaires, we have to just click on the next button and we will move on to the approval section. So by default these are all optional phases which are quite advanced. So currently we are not using any approval, so we'll select the approval type as none. Then we will move on to the next section where this section gives us an option of selecting different types of options we have, like we want to set a price for that SRD or any other thing. So these are quite advanced options we have, or the you can see the properties of an SRD which we can set and then move ahead. So then there are some other notifications also where we want to set this as part of our process, that what notifications should be triggered, so we can click it. So when you click on next, and once you reach to the all of the screens are filled, in the last screen you will see a button called submit. So this is the last stage of an SRD where it is submitted to the system. So when everything is filled, you can click on the submit button, and you can click on the submit button and your SRD will be submitted to the system. Now we will see how we can verify an SRD which is built into the system. You can see you have to, so once the SRD is submitted, it is live into the system, you can, the way of verifying it is that you can go into the service request management, then to the request entry console, and there you can verify it. You can search it, or you can see if it is available in the browse section, and then you can click on that service, provide the response for all the questions which have been asked in the service, and then click on the submit to submit it. If this service request is submitted, to verify it, how you can verify it, you can go onto the right hand side, you can click you can click on one of the any of the services, go to the process section, which is the third tab. There you can see if there is a ticket created, as in our case there should be an incident ID, so you will be able to verify that the incident has been created. Or you can manually go into the system incident management and see if there is a ticket created for this particular service request. Then we will see how we can debug the SRD. So when you create an SRD, submit it, then there can be issues in the system, like few of the possible errors can be that assignments are not configured, data mapping not done properly, or it can be any other issue. So once we fix the issues, then we can resubmit the SRD and it will be initiated again. So this is the form which is used here. So we can click on the view process, then we can fix, we will see we can see the exact error there, and then once the error is fixed, we can resubmit it from the same form, and the same gets submitted into the system and it will be triggered. So this is how we can disable the SRD. This is the process of disabling. It's quite simple. You have to log into the system, you have to go to the form shown on the left hand cycle, which is that same form what we used in the building the PDT. So here, instead of clicking on the process, you have to click on the request definition. Then there are options for searching the request definition. You can select your option, search for it, you will get it in the search table, search result. So once you get it in the search result, you can click view button, you can select it and then click the view button. So you can see on the right hand side the SRD is opened. So here in this SRD, to bring it offline, we have to click take offline button. So the moment you click on take offline button, your SRD will be out of the production system, you mean to say, or it will be disabled. That means that whenever customers will log in, they won't be able to see this SRD anymore in the system.